What are some of the other campaigns that you assisted on or that were involved with
Oh.
for yourself?
We were, in my telling of this story, we were only up to 1963. At the 63, the John Barton gets elected mayor. A little later, well, in 64, I think, he appointed me head of the city legal department.
Okay.
Which put me in touch with lots and lots of different people. I never should have done it. It was too much.
How many attorneys underneath you?
Oh, I don't know. 10 to 15,
Okay.
something like that. And I didn't leave my law firm. I stayed as a partner in the law firm. I was also head of the city legal department, and I was county chairman because I got elected in 64 to be the county chairman.
What were you in charge of as county chairman? What was your role specifically?
Not so much, well, maintaining the organization, finding precinct committeemen for every precinct in the, if possible, running the whole organization, the Democratic organization for Marion County, which was the biggest county in the state.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember how many people were alive? Like what our population for Marion was then?
No.
Okay.
I don't. I'd be just making a wild guess.
Like 500,000?
Oh, yeah.
At least 500,000?
Yeah. And there were about 750 precincts, something like that. In 1964, my friend Andy, who had been helping me all along, he decided to run again for Congress. He had not run, but he had been elected back in the 50s, and he to the state legislature, and then he ran for Congress in 62, and he got beat. 64 came along, and he was going to run again, and he and I pretty much put together his campaign, and his opponent was an ex-mayor, not the same guy I've been talking about. He was the mayor, but a guy named Phil Beatty, who had been a mayor and had been Marion County prosecutor. Andy was, however, pretty well known because he had run for state legislature and had run for Congress in 62. But in Marion County, we have Indiana, and I say Marion County because most counties don't operate this way. But we have what's called a slating convention. And a slate is a list of people endorsed by the party for nomination. And that's prior to the primary. So I and a woman named Patricia Welch, she and I organized a campaign to get Andy slated. And ultimately, we did. That is, Andy, he beat the mayor, former mayor and former prosecutor, by like 8 votes.
Eight?
Out of about 1,100 votes.
Okay.
And, but he won. And so he was the slated candidate. And although very few people expected him to win, even though he was the endorsed candidate, he did win on election day, primary election day.
Do you remember what some of his issues were that he ran on? What he was trying to change and influence? Anything specific?
My name is Andy Jacobs, and I'm running for Congress.
That's about it. Okay.
Issues
He already
were-
had the poll.
Well, you vote for the person you like.
Right. Were you ever friends with Hudnut?
Pardon?
Hudnut?
Did I know him?
Yeah. Did you ever work with him? Like, did you have any Hudnut situations from back in the day, or Lugar? Either of those?
Yeah, I'll
Gentlemen?
tell you about that. Remember that, and I'll tell you.
Okay.
But he wasn't in the picture at this point.
Okay.
So in '64, Andy wins a primary. Or whether it was warranted or not, I got credit for that. And needless to say, I had his backing, but Governor Welsh decided he called me and asked me if I'd run for county chairman. And I did, and I won. So I'm a county chairman.
Was that the first thing you won? As far as major role?
Yeah.
How did you feel? Like, what was that, the night of you winning? Like, were you surprised? Did you think you had it in the
No,
bag?
I just went to bed. I was so tired.
And how long was the campaign up to that?
I was, pardon?
How long was the campaign up to that?
Oh, very short. Andy won on Tuesday, and I was elected on Saturday. That's how long, 4 or 5 days.
Okay.
But I don't think I slept. And that's all I remember from that time. Well, it's not all, but that's one of the main things I remember. I was constantly sleep deprived because I was staying up all night working.
Was anybody working with you late nights that was helping you?
Patricia Welch, yeah, she was. She deserves at least as much credit as I do, if not more. Yeah.
So you were planning for the next day's speeches or planning for the next day's calls, or what were you planning throughout the night?
I was on the telephone.
On the phone.
We were, yeah. I sometimes have the '64 convention for election of chairman, which was me, and the '66, again, was me, but I get it mixed up in my mind.
So what kind of things were accomplished the years that you were chairman of Marion County? What things were accomplished within the county that you can recall?
Because of the landslide of Johnson over Goldwater, in the first year after I was elected chairman, we won everything.
Everything you wanted.
Everything.
Any issue didn't matter. You
Didn't
propose
matter.
it.
We elected treasurer a guy who hadn't paid his taxes. And it was on the front page of the Indianapolis Star. His name was Johnny Dopkins. He was just kind of one of those good old boys. And he had not paid his taxes, but he ran for treasurer and he won.
It's hilarious. That's
So, and we elected everybody else. We elected a governor. We elected 15, maybe it was 11 then, members of the House of Representatives. We elected 5 or 6 senators. From Marion County, I'm talking about. These are all people, in one way or another, I had contact with. Little trouble with a few of them, but not many. And we elected, maybe I already said, an attorney general, secretary of state, a governor, a lieutenant governor. We elected all the county commissioners in Marion County. We elected the county council, all of them. The only reason we didn't elect city council is because they weren't up for election that year. And we just, in '64, we swept everything.
Were there major developments in the city going on at that point?
Yeah.
What type of things
Sure.
were going on in the city?
Well, housing. I knew a little bit more about it than most people do because I was representing a major housing builder.
Okay, I've got a question for you. My grandfather was a builder, and he got some contracts for when the military came back from war, and one of the developments was 200 houses just north of the fairgrounds. And he was just one of the developers in the city. So did you see a lot of those types of growth developments for housing?
Yeah, I lived in one.
And where was that?
The first house we had, 5941. No, I can't remember it. Anyway, we lived between Arlington and Emerson, between.
There. That's where. Okay.
Right. That's the precinct. Was one of those places.
They're
So-
just like cookie cutter, one after the next,
Yeah.
after the next. Yep.
Yep.
Square boxes and
Yeah.
a couple windows and the door in the front.
Yeah. A lot of them didn't have garages,
Correct.
but we needed housing and they built it fast. So,
He did 200 by the fairgrounds and another 200 up in Noblesville and then
what
another.
was his name?
Holt, Holt.
I didn't know him.
Edgar Holt. And Holt Park in Rocky Ripple, he helped build up Holt Park and we donated the land for the park now in Rocky Ripple.
Well, we won everything in the Falls,
Right.
'64. On the way to doing that, after I had become chairman in '64 in the spring, and right after I became chairman, we had a state convention, and there was a big fight over who was going to be the nominee for governor in Indiana. And we had several guys running.
Okay.
And one of them was Roger Brannigan, who ultimately won the nomination. That time we nominated in the convention, and he won the election because everybody won the election in the fall '64. And but on the way there, he had sought, among others, my support. And I said, I didn't think so. And he was a lawyer for the utility industry. This did not strike me as the right fit for the Democratic Party.
Okay.
We were definitely of the more liberal. So I tried to talk Matt Welch out of backing him. Matt didn't like him, but he said, we didn't know that Johnson was going to blow Goldwater away when we were nominating. And he was being cautious, and he said, I think we need a conservative candidate to win in the fall.
Right.
I spent one evening with Matt Welch at his home. His wife was gone somewhere, and he was home alone, and he invited me to come over. And we lived fairly close to one another at that time. I had moved from the east side. Anyway, I went over to see him. We spent the evening, watched the sun go down, and I tried to talk him into back in his ex-roommate at IU, a guy named Luke White, I think was his name. He was a lawyer from a small town, had a great resume. And I thought maybe he'd go for his own roommate. But he said he was still concerned about. Matt was a gentleman, decent guy, and he just said he thought. And so it was just a difference of opinion. And so he backed Brannigan. Brannigan got nominated and ultimately elected. And Brannigan somehow found out that I had tried to talk Matt Welch out of backing him. And Brannigan was a precursor to Trump. Revenge. He wanted revenge, and he tried to get it several times.
What did he try to do
me.
to you? I know. What did he try to do?
Well, I'm jumping back and forth, but he, when you're the county chairman, you maintain, at that time, you had control of the license branches in every county in the state. The county chairman had control. And you got paid, and I got paid by the license branches. He tried to get me to, let me think, I can't remember. Anyway, like 64, let me think for a minute. 64, I was only 65. I think I said I'd been appointed head of the...
Yep.
In the spring of 66, I was coming up for re-election. County chairman's elected for 2 years at a time. And he got a guy to run against me. And no. Spring of 66. He didn't get a guy. He got the mayor to run against me for county chairman. The guy I'd helped get elected was now running against me. Welcome to politics. And he got John Barton to run against me for county chairman.
And what happened?
Pardon?
And what happened?
Ultimately, he when he got the mayor to run against me for county chairman, all the media people were all crowding around the mayor at the city county building, and I was not there. Although I had an office there, one story below the mayor's office, because I was head of the legal department. And the governor, I don't know if he coached him or not, the state chairman, who was ally of the governor, state chairman was, I want to be careful, kind of an unreliable person. Anyway, he called me and he said, the governor, he's the governor's guy. He's in the governor's office. He calls me and says, the governor is trying to get John Barton, the mayor, to run against you for county chairman. Just thought you ought to know.
Did that change your strategy?
Mm-hmm.
Did you change anything in your strategy because of it, or any kind of
Just a little
messaging to the public?
Well, started working on it a little sooner. I was at county headquarters at the time. And anyway, so back to City Hall. Press is talking to the mayor, and mayor says, well, he's running for county chairman, and he expected everybody who works for him to support him. And if they don't, he's going to fire him. One of the reporters, poor John, he had forgotten that I worked for him. Honestly, he really had. And the reporter says, Jim Beatty works for you. Are you going to fire him? John's signature move was he had a cigar, and he gets out his cigar and lights it, and he said, well, I guess so. Headline in the paper, you can imagine what it was. I was fired. This on about a Tuesday or a Wednesday before the convention, at which I was running for re-election. He was now running for election. I didn't sleep again till Saturday afternoon. But in the meantime, I called every precinct committee, 1,200 of them in this county, all day, all night.
Wow. Did you find a lot of people were supporting on your side?
Yeah. They were very offended by the way the thing happened. Mm-hmm. They weren't necessarily devoted to me or anything like that. Some were. That sort of thing gets a lot of people devoted to you when you appear to be the underdog and unfairly treated. And I won by about 2-1 over.
That's great.
Over him, yeah. I don't remember the actual number, but
So that was into 65?
That was in the spring of 66.
66?
Yeah.
So did you continue to be involved in the city politics throughout the end of the 60s? Did you go from one role to the next?
Yeah. I was re-elected chairman in 68.
Okay.
I was elected over the mayor in 66. In 68, a fellow named John Christ, a judge who should not have been running for political office, but he was. And he was basically running and had the support of the faction, had supported Mayor Barton. John ran against me, but I was pretty easily reelected chairman in 68. And then I quit. I quit running for county chairman, and I ran a couple of times.
Was there anything specific that you wanted to accomplish that you were not able to accomplish when you were chairman?
No. County chairmans, you're not dealing with an issue, generally speaking. You're dealing with making sure there's a body in that precinct that's going to go out and knock on doors. It's not issue or very issue. Now, there was a lot I've skipped over something that occurred. After the 64 election, we had this big majority in the state legislature. We had issues there, lots of them. And I sort of ran the boiler room. I can't tell you how naive I was about how things. I was constantly learning new stuff because I just didn't have any experience before. Anyway, I had a friend named Jack Dillon. He got elected Attorney General in 64. And he did a couple of things that were really valuable to me. He said we needed to set up a group that met at least once a week, which we did, and we met once a week for the next 6 years while I was chairman.
So that was through the mid-70s?
Took me up to 1970.
Up to 1970,
well,
gotcha.
till May of 1970.
And who was mayor in 70? Who was the mayor?
Lugar
Lugar was.
was by then.
So what did you think of Lugar?
Well, I liked him. And for a couple of reasons, I'm digressing, of course, here. Dick and I knew each other very well.
Yeah.
And the reason, just happenstance, my wife and his wife went to high school together.
Shar?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Char Lugar and Phyllis Beatty went to high school together in Detroit. Shortly after we came here, Char called Phyllis because she and Dick Lugar were living here in Indianapolis, of course, and invited us to dinner at their home. We started having dinner at one another's home back and forth for the next 3 or 4 years, fairly often. Dick Lugar and I often had lunch together.
Did you happen to ever meet?
Hmm?
Did you happen to ever meet Richard Holt, that was in charge of the auditing system for the city, and he also did it for LS Ayers, and he started
What's the
working?
name?
Richard Holt.
No.
Okay. So you got to be very close with Lugar.
Well, I don't know if, I guess we were good friends. I mean, it's not as if we wouldn't have recognized each other on the street or something like. Yeah, we were. He would call me up and say, how about, we used to have lunch out by the racetrack together. In later years, Dick got a little, after he got more, he wasn't involved in politics at all at the beginning. He was running a business, and but he was interested in politics, of course. And he's a brilliant guy. He was. And anyway.
Well, I think that's a good place for us to pause for next time.
I probably left out something not important, but it would be hard for you or anybody else to understand all of the twists and turns that took place. I think that it's fair to say the Star decided to call the group, of which I was the leader because I was the county chairman, the Young Turks.
The Young Turks?
Yeah.
Where does that Turk come from? Why is it Turks?
Ask the Star. I don't know.
Okay.
I suspect that there was I think they didn't think it up. They didn't think it up. Anyway, they were pretty much, they hated my friend Andy Jacobs, the congressman, that is Pulliam, the publisher, hated it because he hated Andy's father, who had been in Congress back in the 40s. I've forgotten why they hated him, but they were that kind. And we were pushing the party in a more liberal direction, no doubt about it. And we achieved a great deal of it in the 1965 legislature.
Okay.
We basically changed the structure of the city government, which they then, the Republicans, adopted and called it Unigov. But in a way, it was the same thing as we had done, but with a twist. It was designed, in our case, to maintain Democratic control, and in their case, to maintain Republican control of the city.
Right. Wow.
And that's what happened.
Well, thank you for sharing today. I'm going to close this one out, Jim.
Okay.